Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. It's been a while, but we're back. And today we're doing another live stream with Phil, Cam, and me, Frederick. And we have again a special guest for today, Josh Walker. He's the audio systems engineer at Dirac, and he was also a automotive tuning engineer before, also at Dirac. So he has a wealth of experience in fine-tuning calibrations of acoustical environments. Welcome, Josh. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Good evening to you, I guess. It's evening for me, so it's even later for you, I guess.
That's right. It's Friday, technically midnight, so that's Friday already. So,
No,
hello,
thanks for staying up.
Phil.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Hello,
So,
Mr.
Phil, you want to
Walker.
kick off?
Yes, so hello everyone. It's Phil and Cam, and we are joined by Frederick, Hong Kong. Late night for Frederick, as well as Josh. And where are you located, Mr. Walker?
I'm in Uppsala in Sweden, so
In
just north of
Sweden.
Stockholm.
So what time is it there?
It's 5 p.m., so everyone has just left the office.
Okay, so you're doing the late shift. So we'd like to thank everybody for coming. Um, if you look at the rooms that we have a lot of nice rooms in this facility, and we're always trying to optimize their performance to show off the products that we have. Originally we were going to do this demonstration or do this discussion in our reference theater, but our reference theater has the speakers placed perfectly. It has full room treatments in it. So we want to pick one of the rooms that were more challenging, that's more reflective of a normal home. So I just did a Dirac active room treatment measurement in our CI room, which is the room that we're in right now, which utilizes in-wall speakers. Now, of course, in-wall speakers have to go where in-wall speakers will fit. The in-wall subs have to go where the in-wall subs would fit. So sometimes that's not the optimum position. Plus, people who buy this type of stuff, maybe in walls or CI-based stuff, they don't want a bunch of room treatments all over their room. So this is actually a more challenging room, and having Mr. Walker here to help us walk through and how to properly tune this space is really, really important. So we asked you guys at the beginning of this to submit questions. So I have a list of questions. Actually, Cam has them on his computer, and I have them actually printed out here, where we're going to go through some of the questions that were pre-submitted, because a lot of those questions are common. And then after that, we encourage you along the live stream to continue to add questions into the live stream so Cam could feed those to us and we can answer them along the way.
Producer Nick Andrade, can you turn up Mr. Phillips' volume, please? He's a little quiet.
Okay. Testing, 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 testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is that better? Those out
Yeah,
there?
that's a bit better. Yeah.
Because it's funny, I'm the loudest, me and Cam are the loudest people on this call. So theoretically, you should be able to pick me up from Cam's computer, from Cam's thing. So as I log into Dirac, I'd like to talk, Josh, let's just talk about the first thing. We got a lot of questions about microphone placement, right? So if I was gonna do active room treatment in a room like this is a 5.4 with 0.2. So 5 channels, 4 subs, 2 heights. And a lot of times we have maybe 10 people standing around as we do demonstrations in this room. How many microphone positions should I take?
So, I mean, Phil, in your room there, you've got like one sofa, I can see. So typically you're just sat on the sofa listening. There's not any other sort of tertiary seating in the room, I guess.
Well, most of the time people will bring in like little stools or people will stand around for demonstrations. But in the real world, it would only be 3. But in this room, we go a little wider than that.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, if we go with the real world use case there, we recommend certainly with active room treatment, like a base level of 9 measurements. And ideally kind of if we take the rule of 1 measurement per speaker in the system. So if we've got what was it 5.4.2, so that's 11 speakers. So if we capture 11 measurements across the listening environment, then we're going to be pretty safe.
Yeah, so we took a little more because, like as you mentioned, if you look at the Dirac program, you have your studio, you have your your home, and then you have the. So we took the wide listening. So I
Sure.
believe there's about what 18 measurements if you pick the wide listening. Is there any disadvantage to utilizing doing more measurements?
No, of course not. One of the things with active room treatment, and without wanting to get too deep on theory this early on, is with active room treatment, we like to understand the wavefront and how sound is traveling across the space in order for the other speakers to help out. So if we've got more measurements there, and we can space those in your scenario maybe a foot apart at a minimum, and that would be great. That would get us a good density, and the algorithm will be able to understand exactly how the sound is traveling across your listening space there.
That makes sense. Now, actually, let me see the questions here. Cam had them on his computer.
And there's also a question in the chat as well.
Okay, so
let me know when you're ready.
Okay, so let's go look at the questions that we have. That's because Nick was nice enough to compile those questions into a section. So.
So I can, while we're there, Phil, I can give you another little tip. So if you mentioned we've got these two seating scenarios, one that's just confined to the sofa, and then we've got a scenario where you might have other people on additional seating. One of the things you can do when you're measuring is start by measuring the sofa, and then save that project session. Save that as sofa only measurements.
Okay.
Once you've done that, continue measuring all of these other locations where people might sit. So the extra stools, the extra chairs, measure those as well, and save that again as an additional measurement. Save it as whole room or demo scenario. And now you've got two sets of measurements. One that's only the sofa that can be optimized for just, a couple of people on the sofa, and then one that's optimized for the whole room when you're doing a demo. And you've not had to measure the whole room twice. You've measured it once, but you just saved halfway through when you were done with the sofa.
Okay, that's a really good idea. One of the benefits of actually going to active room treatment from base control or one of the other Dirac Live is if you already had those microphone measurements, you can just once you have the license, you can just reopen the file you already have and go in and make those different adjustments. So. Now, and that actually answers one of the other questions. Should the microphone layout be different between base control and active room treatment?
No. Short answer.
Very simple, Josh. Very, very, very simple, right?
And what I would say to that is, obviously we do need that microphone density. So if you skimped out on the measurements when you were doing base control, then it might be advantageous to have some more measurements in there. And so I would say that, but if you've done a good suite of measurements in the first instance for room correction or base control, then you can go ahead and use those measurements again and save yourself the time, like you said, Phil.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So measurement levels. Okay, now so the next thing somebody was asking about measurement levels. And the main thing with the measurement levels is always just trying to get all of those measurement levels into the middle of when you make you don't really have to make each level perfect, correct?
Exactly. So that page is not about precision. We're not calibrating the volume for every speaker. We're just making sure that the microphone can hear every speaker. And one of the things that I would say to that is when you're setting that, it's a good opportunity to use that step in the process to balance the gains of the system before Dirac. So when you're setting the level of your subwoofer there, if your sub is too loud or too quiet, it's a good opportunity to see that and then just either crank the sub a little bit or back it off so that all of your speakers are ballpark in the right kind of volume level. So that Dirac doesn't have to turn anything down dramatically or turn anything up dramatically to get that even.
Yeah, that is a very good point. So in this space, we actually did used an SBO meter to set the volumes just using my phone's SBO meter first. So they were all pretty close. So when I went into the Dirac program and I was like, set your microphone levels, they were all pretty much fairly even. So as you said, you wouldn't have to, the system wouldn't have to aggressively boost or cut the signal to make it actually work. Now, one of the things, I actually have the software program open right now, and I actually sent the information to Josh, Mr. Walker, to go over to look at this stuff. I use Mr. Walker because for some reason I got this speech impediment that I want to put an H to the end of his name, and he keeps saying it's boss
With a J.
with a J, and my brain is just not functioning, so I call him Mr. Walker. So
Here's
that's
the
just
thing,
our
Phil.
little.
Now everyone in my office calls me Mr. Walker because of you.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so let's go in here, and the main thing is, if you want to learn more about the basic setup, microphone placement, measurements, and all that, we already have another video that we will make sure that we will put into the chat link, as well as we'll put in the description for those who are watching this pre-recorded, that I go through step by step in this space to show you the original measurement process. Now we're past that, and I get all of these measurements, right? The next question is, what do I do with them, right? So that's the main thing that people were asking about, because if you look at active room treatment, there's a lot of other adjustments you can make. You could trust the system to do it, or you can decide that you want to make some modifications for your personal taste and things like that. So let's go through and let's bring up the software program, because that's of course. It should go right there. Yay! So this is the software program, right? So this is actually, I can go in and I can see the response of each of the speaker categories, right? Now, the first thing everybody asks is, Josh, what is a group? Because I'm looking here and I see group, right? And I see the 4 subwoofers are in a group, and I see the middle rights are in a group, the middle heights are in a group. I see that, so they're assigned to groups. What are groups before we even get started?
So, I mean, groups is just a convenient way of handling the processing in the groups the default groups that are suggested are symmetrical. So it's a great way to work symmetrically through your processing and make sure, because typically, we don't have different speakers left to right. So the front left and the front right are going to be the same. The surround left, surround right, they're also going to be the same. So it makes sense to process those similarly. So by having these groups, we can adjust one target curve instead of adjusting individual target curves for every single speaker. The other thing here is we can drag and drop things into different groups or drag them out to their own groups. And that can be really useful if you've got 4 height speakers and you just want to process those all the same, they're the same speaker, similar distances, similar measured characteristics, then we can just throw those in one group. Equally, we can pull things out of groups to be a bit more advantageous. So subwoofers, for example, if you have one subwoofer that is more capable than the other subwoofers, certainly with ART, it might be advantageous to pull the more capable subwoofer out, so you can treat it a little differently to the other subwoofers there.
Okay, so that's a good point. If you look at this, in this room we have 4 identical ISW 8s, I believe is what they are, the big end walls, and they're all being driven off of CDA2 Bowers amplifiers. They're all the same, right? So treating them all the same makes sense. We just upgraded 2 of our subwoofers in our reference theater to 2 Definitive Technology DN15s in the front and 2 DN12s in the back. We used to just have 4 DN12s. When I did that adjustment, originally I had all 4 subs together. Now it makes sense, as you're telling me, to make the 2 15s their own group and the 2 12s their own group, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just down to the type of subwoofer as well. I mean, we all know that if you put a sub in a different place in the room, if one sub is in the corner or one sub is, in the middle of the wall, that sub's going to behave differently in that room. So it could be advantageous based on its measured performance to pull it out and treat it slightly differently.
Okay.
But equally, keeping them all in the same group as the default, will still put you in a really good spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, for example, if you look at this room, we have group 1 is the front left and the front right. Group 2 is the center. In this room, we have 3 identical CWM 8.3s. So if I wanted to, I could group those 3 together because just to simplify the tuning to make sure that if I want to simplify that. Well, now there was a question, Josh, and that I remember seeing in the list of questions here about the center channel, and they were like, should I have the center channel assist in this, and will it with active room treatment, and would that affect the vocal clarity? Should I leave that one out? What do you think?
So interesting, and we can use your room as an example there, Phil, because like you said, you've got 3 identical speakers. However, when we look at the measurements in your room, the center speaker measures differently. So in the low end, the speakers you've got, I believe the F6, the -6 point of the speaker is 30 hertz, if I'm correct, on those Bowers
because you can see, so this is the group 1, that's the left and right, and then this is the center channel. So they do have
rolling off a little bit earlier than I would expect it to of that speaker, and that will be down to the room and the placement of that speaker and the room modes that are happening down there. And that's kind of unfortunate. Obviously, you've got 3 of the same speaker. You want those to sound the same. So we can use that left and right to support that center and bring back those frequencies that we've lost there. So we can use the left and right to bolster the center. And then there's the root of the question here, which is, should I use my center to support my other speakers? And there's a lot of advice online that says, don't use your center channel to support other speakers because it's the most important speaker, and you don't want to, have it do other things and not sound as good. But I would say look at it on a case-by-case scenario. In this instance, you don't have a smaller center speaker. So often, we're all familiar, maybe there's 2 big towers for your left and right, and then center is maybe a 2-way or a smaller speaker there. In the instance that it's a smaller speaker, I would probably leave it alone. I wouldn't have it support the left and right. But actually, Phil, in your room, you'll see that using the center to support the left and right also helps the seat-to-seat variation of the left and right. A good way to see that represented is if you look at the spread. So in the key on the bottom right-hand side, if we look at spread. So crucially, if we look at spread corrected, obviously it's not calculated just yet, but if we look at the spread corrected and we add the center to supporting the left and right, you'll see that the seat-to-seat variation improves dramatically. So in this instance, because we've got a great capable center speaker, I would be happy to use it to support the left and right because it's beneficial to the left and right as well. And I don't believe with the capability of the speaker, it would be detrimental to the center.
Yeah, because we've actually built theaters that actually had the center channel had its own, they were bi-amped with a 15-inch woofer to go with them. So, the center was definitely not hurting to help in these particular applications, right?
Exactly. And remember, like the left and right channels there. Sorry to jump. Placements. So in a symmetric room, symmetrically placed speakers will measure in a very similar way, but the center channel is in a different, is not symmetrically placed to those 2 other speakers, the left and right, which means that we can use the position of the speaker to our advantage to help out the other 2 speakers there.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I'm just going through my list of questions. The other thing, since we're talking about subwoofers, we just, somebody had mentioned, well, even if I have them placed 2 subwoofers and I have them placed diagonally, one in the front left and one in the rear right, it still would be basically look at how they interact, and if they interact fairly similar, keep them as a group. But if they can radically different, you may want to separate them. But that's basically you could experiment with multiple variations, and then look, like you said, look at the spread, at the final spread at the end result to see what which way provides the best solution.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, if we keep them within the same group, that's not to say that they will both have the same filters, the same processing applied. They won't. You know, the algorithm will look at how the individual speaker is performing within the group, and
Okay.
try and meet that target of the group. So keeping them in the same group does work. But you know, if you've got one sub that is hitting 10 hertz and the rest only go down to 30, then I would definitely pull that sub out and treat it slightly differently.
Okay. So all right. So let's talk about when we talk about the term support, right? Because when I first saw this, Frederick and I were actually in Dubai, and he was like, "Oh, you can go in and change the amount of support that each speaker does." And that's using those two little icons right here, correct? This is where this comes in. It's is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So there's two different ways to change the support behavior, both with a similar result. There's the window that you've got open there, which opens with the ellipsis on the group, and that is the more comprehensive menu, but maybe not as visually pleasing. And in here we can change the support level and the support frequencies. But then if you want a more graphic representation on the plot itself, there's a way to see which groups are supporting. And you can see them with regards to the frequency ranges as well.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the one down here is showing that for this group one that's highlighted, these are the other groups that are supporting it right down here. So these are the other groups that are supporting it for my group one. Is that correct? Is it these?
Yep, exactly. So those are
Okay.
all the ones. And you can click there as well. If you hover over them, you'll get a little checkbox, and you can not on group one because that's its own group. But if you go down to another, you can deselect it and select it. So if you click,
Okay.
it will disappear. If you
Okay.
click again, it'll come back.
Okay. And
So
if
that's
you
really
want to go
quick.
in and make those fine tuning, that would be this. If I want, now the thing that got me with this interesting, it says support level. You would think the support level would be more if the minus was less, but this is kind of the opposite of that. If you want more support, it's like minus 24 instead of minus 18. If you want less support, it would be minus 12 or minus 8. Why would you want less support? What would be a reason why you would ever want less support?
So the crucial thing here, and maybe a misconception, obviously we can see a dB value to that support, and it says level, so that might suggest that it's going to turn the speaker up or down. But crucially, support level actually pertains to the filter calculation as opposed to the resulting volume of that speaker. So that's mathematically the correct way about it within the filter calculation is this inverted negative value. So like you said, more is less, less is more. So a minus 18 or a minus 24 is going to be processing or calculating to try and resolve much harder than a minus 12, a minus 6. So one of the things you can do is back off the support if you think a speaker is maybe doing a lot, or it's maybe close to a listener, a little bit more audible. Or if it's not really contributing anything, so you can back it off a little bit there.
Okay.
I would say, however, with regards to the support channels, in order of importance of parameters, the F support high and low would probably be the first thing that I would tweak. Then the support level. So if I'm too close to a speaker, then I would probably bring the F support high down, so I don't localize as much of the upper bass region to that speaker.
Okay. I can think of another application for that, Josh. A lot of times you'll get in walls or in ceilings, right? A lot of times in ceilings play into an infinite baffle. If it runs a frequency sweep, because that speaker has this gigantic box, it'll play pretty low at lower volumes. But when you really
Right.
start trying to crank it up, its frequency response that it wants to play non-distorted, it's probably not going to be as low. So that would be, you would go into that support level, and they would say, yeah, start at 150, but instead of helping all the way down to 50 like you think you can, maybe you should stop at about 80 or 100. So that would
Exactly.
be another way that you could actually do that. Now, Frederick, do you have any feedback? Looks like you. I like it when he pops in because I know he wants to say something.
Yeah, I see a lot of questions already popping up in the chat,
Yes.
actually. So
There
there's
is.
Okay.
plenty of things there. So we may need to spend some time there as well,
Oh
because
yeah.
they're relating. They're actually interacting as we speak at the same time.
Okay, so let's work with some of those right now, because we are gonna. I know, that's why I know there's a lot of people on this call that wanted to talk to Mr. Walker, right? So
Exactly.
and by the way, we are gonna get into how to build target curves and stuff like that, and that applies to all, whether you're using Dirac Live or with Dirac Live with base management, Dirac Live with base controller, Dirac Live with active room treatment. You can build target curves. We'll talk about that, and how do you build them, and how much can I boost things without distorting and things like that. And for those who want to know, this whole conversation applies to anything that supports Dirac active room treatment. So in the future, you should be buying a Denon or Marantz. But if you don't have one of the brands, poor soul, and you want to learn how this works, our conversation here applies to other brands as well, as they have this particular capability. So Frederick, what are some of the things that are related that you can ask Mr. Walker about?
Okay, so maybe I just go chronologically, because then it's easier to track off. So there's a question from Benji. I have a 3.2.2 system. It's only the front LCR speakers that go down to 65 hertz, 2 ported subwoofers, and 2 Atmos speakers, no sides or surrounds. I have a Cinema 30. Will Dirac ART be helpful in this case?
Definitely.
No
One
doubt.
word. No, so the fantastic thing with ART is, whilst it is amazing in a multi-channel room, it works with anything from stereo upwards, with any bass-capable speakers. Obviously, working under 150 hertz, the front speakers sound like they'll be able to contribute. The subwoofers definitely contribute. Maybe not the Atmos speakers so much, but that's where the other speakers, the fronts and the subs, can help the Atmos speakers out. So you can get like real full range, beefy height channels as well. The one thing I would say there to help out in that case would be maybe look at a bit of variation in placement. So if the subwoofers are right next to the mains, then they're going to have a very similar in-room response. So maybe pulling those subwoofers away from the mains a little bit, looking at a bit of variation in position, would actually help the algorithm to work more and get a really good result. But yes, one word answer, definitely it would help.
Yeah, then this is similar from Jaco van Nieuwenhoven. How useful is ART when the speakers have an F3 point of 50 to 60 hertz? That's kind of in the same area, right?
Definitely. When we look at sort of 50 to 100, it's where a lot of punch exists. Maybe not the rumble, but certainly the punch. And when you have a room with resonances and things, the punch and those kind of low frequency transient information, that's the stuff that really rings out. So it'll definitely help in that regard.
Okay, there was a question from Chris while we were talking about setting the levels before you start the sweep. He was asking, should the subs be louder than the other speakers?
So to my point earlier with trying to balance the system as well as possible in the first place, plus minus a few dB, louder, I tend to veer on the side of having them a little bit louder, so we've got maybe a little more headroom. But yeah, a little bit louder would be great. A couple of dB.
Now, before we move on from that, remember, if you want more bass, that's where the target curves come in. So instead of trying to just turn up the gains because you want more bass, you look at the frequency response of the room, and then you can build a target curve that's up 6-8 dB or whatever you want, if your speakers can support that based on your measurements, to put that a Harman curve or whatever kind of curve you want into it. So don't feel like you have to turn the subs up to get the end result of more bass in your room. You could do that by building a proper target curve, which we'll talk about a little later.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I loaded a target curve from Harman, then I did +8 and +6 whether I'm watching movies or listening to music. So I have 2 speaker presets, but that's another story. Can we carry on with the questions in the chat, Phil?
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
we
ahead.
got
I mean, it's
1, 2, 3,
yeah.
4.
Well, long as they're in this topic, because we are going to get into target curves, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole first. I just want to really focus on the grouping and the channel level, and then we'll
Yeah,
go. When we
speaking
get
of
into target.
grouping, David was also asking left and right speakers might be the same, but on their SPL graph, they might not be due to different acoustical conditions. I think you kind of touched a little bit on there, Joss. So is it better to separate them then in this case?
So within a group, everything within a group will support everything else in that same group. So if they, due to the room, if there's whatever issue with the SPL in the low frequencies or a room mode, keeping them in the same group will be fine because they'll have the same target curve and they will both work towards reaching that target curve and help each other out. So I would keep those in the same group, definitely.
Okay, we also mentioned about the measuring points. How many points do we need to take? Subdipto Mukherjee is asking how much measuring points do we have to take for a 9.4.6 speaker setup with a Denon A1H? How much difference would there be then with boom correction versus adding ART to it? So 2 questions. How many points minimum?
How many points did we take, Josh, at Cedia? Because we had that same similar system. It's like in the 20s, right?
Yeah, 27. We had 25 seats, so we took 27 and a couple of extra measurements. To answer that question properly, it does depend on the seating area. If you have a really comfy looking sofa like Phil, then you can probably do maybe what was the channel count we said?
946.
946.
946. I heard someone saying you should do as many points at least as the number of speakers in your setup.
Yeah.
I
In a
got
smaller
that from Mr. Walker.
exactly. In a smaller listening environment, you can potentially get away with less. So 9 as a bare minimum. But if we stick to the 1 per speaker rule, then we'll be really safe.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, before we move on to the next one, is it's better. More data will never hurt a calculation. It just gives you a better understanding of the space. So if you could take 20, or I think even if you just pick the wide one, it's going to give you 18 choices anyway. You may take a smaller area because your seating room is smaller, but the more positions you take, the better the information you can provide to software. And they don't take that long to take a measurement. So if you're going to do this and you've invested in that system, an extra 20 minutes to take a few more, or an extra 20 minutes or a half an hour to take some more measurements, it's probably going to be in your best interest.
Yeah. And I would say, a sofa environment like yours, like measurements a foot apart is fine. Obviously, a foot apart in a multi-row theater might be a bit more challenging and time-consuming. So no more than 3 feet apart, ideally, because we want to understand how that sound is propagating across the space. And when we start to position microphones too far apart, then we don't understand the propagation between the microphones. So no more than 3 feet, ideally.
Okay. All right.
All right. There was a question also. Will ART be released?
Sorry. That's me. I'm bad.
Say again, Phil. I wasn't sure.
Wasn't there 2 parts to that question? I wasn't sure if we covered both parts of that.
There was, will ART help? And again, I'm
said
going
yes.
back to my one-word answer. Yes. Try it, for sure.
Dramatically. It will help dramatically. Okay.
So for ART, you have to have the previous versions. Do you need bass control for ART, or can you just do room correction and then just add ART without bass control? Is that making any sense?
Yeah, of course. So if you've got a room full of really capable full-range speakers, and you don't have subs, or you've just got a left and right main, and you don't have additional subs. If you don't have subs, you don't need bass control. But if you do have subs, then you will need the bass control license as well to access the full suite.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so Chris was asking, that's a feature request, I think. Please change the user interface so that we can change the F low minimum for all the groups at once instead of group by group like it works now. Is there a way maybe that you can group them all together and then maybe with an option key do all at the same time, or is it really step by step?
No, I hear you. And it may or may not be written on a whiteboard upstairs.
There you go. To-do
comment.
list. Okay.
Nice.
He's also asking how much latency ART is adding for the overall processing using its AR3, the FIR DSP for compensating the speaker groups. It's almost instantly, right? I mean,
well, so we've got to take into effect that ART needs to look into the future a little bit. So in order to look into the future, we have to delay the present, in a sense. So when we're looking at obviously the speed of sound and sound waves traveling across a space, we need to preempt what's going to happen in order for the other speakers to fit in. So there is a bit of processing latency there. I think depending on the size of the room and the distances between speakers, around 20 milliseconds in order for us to be able to calculate what's going to happen, and treat it before it does happen, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Steph Colozzi is asking, he has a Cinema 30. He's very happy with the ART results for multi-channel, but he's having dreadful results with 2-channel. So any suggestions here? There's like crazy timing mismatches with the bass notes playing earlier than they should in 2-channel mode. Because we also support Dirac for 2-channel, like the M1, for example, and the Denon Home amp.
Is that ART for 2-channel? He was saying.
Yes, exactly. I think that's what he's saying.
And it was the bass notes that were specifically the problem.
Yeah.
So I would assume then it's playing back 2-channel within a multi-channel system. So stereo playback in a multi-channel room with subwoofers. One of the parameters we can look at for that, and I don't know, Phil, if you want to open up the window again.
I have
if
it
we
right
look
here.
at the
Of course, my
LFE group, so whichever group that is, so the group with the subwoofers.
The group of subwoofers. Hold on here. My computer, great spinning wheel of death. I got a Mac. I'm going to tease him.
Okay, I can talk through it anyway. So when you go into the subwoofer group, there is an option that says like LFE reference, and by default the center channel is selected, and you can change that to various other speakers if you want. But what that's doing, we're not using the center channel to play anything necessarily. We're using the timing of the center channel as a target to align the subwoofers. So in 2-channel playback, maybe it could be advantageous to switch that to the left speaker or the right speaker. Having said that, though, if it's 2-channel playback, then there wouldn't be an LFE output. So maybe that's not going to work. So maybe play with the support level for the subwoofers. If the subwoofers are placed around the room, then maybe placing or decreasing the support level for the subwoofers that are further away could be advantageous.
Okay.
Surprised, because it should be pretty tight.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I don't have experimented myself with 2-channel, even though that was the intent. I have terrible acoustics. I have a hallway right behind me next to the sofa, and I've got a window on my left side that's reflective, obviously, unless I close the windows with the curtains. So my aim was to use all the speakers, because that's the idea of ART. All the speakers will contribute and try and fix the acoustics in such a way that you have perfect 2-channel playback. That's the intent, right?
Exactly. Co-optimization.
I think we're almost through this. Somebody was asking any Black Friday deals coming up.
Okay, well, hold on. We haven't gotten there yet. We're not.
There's a lot later.
More questions before we start
Exactly.
talking about holiday holidays and stuff like that. The next thing that we want to talk about is target curves, right? So what's happening in this room right now is our IT people were playing with our network. So I had the unit connected via Dirac Live, via the Dirac software to the AVR that's in this room. And our network is coming in and coming out, which is causing it to spin with the wheel of death. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the program file without connecting it to the AVR. I could do that, and then we could talk about building curves, because you can actually play with something without it being connected to the network, to the receiver, right? And then connect it to the receiver later and then load it. Would that be correct, Mr. Walker? Can I open the program without it being connected to the AVR? I believe I can, right?
Give it a go. I believe you can continue to play with it if the device goes offline. I'm not sure if you can open it up because you need to connect to the device first.
Yeah, well, I just rebooted it, so that's what's going on. Because I need to go yell at IT upstairs, or just go get a cable and physically connect my cable right now, my AVR, to the switch back there. So not as they mess with the Wi-Fi network, I don't have these types of issues. So, note to self.
Yeah, there's a couple of forums where you can download the Harman curves. We probably have a more official site where you can get them and then play around with them. So you can load that as a target curve and then play around. I think I've even tried that by not directly connecting through the, what should I say? It wasn't directly connected to the AVR with the computer. I was using the iPad with the Dirac app on it. That would work as well.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go back and talk first about what a target curve is. Okay.
Yep.
So a lot of times people think they want frequency response to be flat. And it has been determined by that people, it seems good on paper, but people do not like flat frequency response. Now, a lot of times when a speaker is built, they measure it in an anechoic chamber, right? And they say, oh, this speaker is 20 to 20 kilohertz plus or minus 3 dB. Look how flat it is, right? However, when you take that speaker and you put it into a room, the speaker interacts with the room and you get things such as room gain, right? Air in a room, if you're 25 feet from the, like if you go to a theater, you could be 40 feet from the main speaker. As that sound goes through that giant space, it acts almost like a high frequency absorber, which rolls off the top, the high frequencies at the top. So what you end up with is this, instead of it being flat, this boost at the top and a roll off at the bottom. And people tend to prefer that. Now, the how much you boost up back of the bass frequencies is determined about the capabilities of your system. If you have this extra room gain that was added to the system, you could put that back if you want to. So and that determines by looking at the chart, the graphs. And if you see my subwoofers are up this many dB, you could build a target curve to put that back. Would that be the best way to talk to kind of get it started there, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great approach. Obviously, when you open the filter design tab within Dirac Live, you're presented with what we call the shelving filters. So you've got a high and a low, and it's just two little tabs, and we can bring up the bass and we can bring up the treble. So that's a great way to start. And just for user preference, like if you like more bass, then you can increase the bass. And get something really kind of punchy there. And like Phil said, often it's preferable, and as humans, we prefer to kind of dip off the high frequencies a little bit. And we can do that. If you want to get into something a bit more custom, obviously a lot of people have preferred speakers that have preferred characteristics. So of course you can maybe follow closer to what how the speaker behaves. So that's definitely another approach. I know that's something you do, Phil, with the Bowers and Wilkins speakers, and that can sound great as well. One of the things I find with active room treatment, so because one of the effects of active room treatment is really cleaning up the low frequency, all of this kind of bloated energy that exists in the low frequency that can resonate around a room. When I'm using, something that isn't ART, I might actually aim for a lower.
I think
Joss.
our Wi-Fi is having a day of it.
Going as well.
Um,
Did I cut out for a second there?
Yeah,
okay, so
just for a
I think it
second.
may have been you, Josh. So could you repeat that statement?
So if I'm not using
You're
active
back.
room treatment, then I might be inclined to have maybe a lower base target curve, so less base response because of all this bloated energy in the room. So the base will kind of propagate all of this resonance and energy that is maybe not favorable. Now with active room treatment, all of that bloating gets cleared up. And actually now we have a much clearer direct wave from the subs, what was intended to be heard in the first place, not all of the bloating around it.
Mhm.
So with active room treatment, I actually get away with doing maybe 2-3 dB more
Mhm.
in my base on the target curve, because now you've got something that's really precise and punchy and you don't have that bloating masking it. So I've found typically whenever I'm doing an active room treatment filter design, I end up with a higher target curve in the base frequencies because I'm not having to contend with all that bloating, and it's more fun,
Okay.
more preferable.
Yes, and as Frederick mentioned, there's huge debates on what's the best curve, right? And as people say, hey, there's the Harmon curve. I know that Joe and Tel and Chana have this thing called magic beans that will give you suggestions for target curves. Everybody has their idea, right? But the main thing I always say is you can't, if the bass is not there, you can't boost the bass into it, right? So if you look at it and you're only 2 dB up on bass, you cannot add 8 because all you're going to do is start adding distortion. So I just say the safest way is don't, it's all, you never blow anything up by cutting it. So if you're up by 10 dB, well, actually, Josh is saying, well, you actually can.
Hang on. So I'll counter that. I'll counter it. Let's go.
Okay.
So with active room treatment, if your left front speaker, you've got two 6-inch drivers in it, and like you rightly said, Phil, if you try and boost that by 10 dB, and you can encounter distortion. But remember, with active room treatment, we're co-optimizing. So now
Okay.
your speaker that had two 6-inch drivers now has a room full of drivers. It
Okay.
has the subwoofer involved. It has the surround woofers involved. It has the other front speakers woofers involved. So now our one channel that was only two 6-inch drivers is now a really powerful, and I'm not a massive fan of the term super speaker, but effectively we've created a super speaker. So now you can boost 10 dB because we've got so much more resource in the room that's able to play back that signal and that's able to fit it in at the right time, so that you can get a really kind of cohesive, hopefully distortion-free, thumpy, fun, punchy system.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so target curves are kind of a fun thing to play with. You'll see whenever I do a target curve, I always put like a little, like depending on the speaker. Like for example, I look at the response of the speaker, and if I look at a lot of Bowers and a lot of our speakers, there's a little dip at about 2K, right? And if I look at the speaker and I see that speaker has that little dip at 2K or wherever that frequency spot is, I probably put that back because that's normally where the tweeter in the mid range or the tweeter in the mid bass are crossing over, and they put that in to make that sound better to your ear. So I put that back. So being able to look at the before measurement and the after measurement tells you how much do I want to put in a little mid-range compensation, like, or do I want to, how much can I add to the bass at the back. So the quickest way so instead of you going over to your subwoofers and turning up the subwoofer levels, most of the time if you build a target curve with the bass up. So instead of you going over and trying to turn your subwoofers up 6 dB, you just say, no, the frequency response in the bass area, I want to be 6 dB. And the system will make that happen. And it's going to be a lot more predictable than you trying to play with your sub knobs at the later date. Would that be the best way to say it?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You know, it is a target. It's like what do we want the end result to be? And if we want the end result to be, you know, 6 dB a base, then that's where our target curve is going to be. And I think, you know, there's a lot of discourse about target curves, like you said, Frederick and Phil. A lot of people have different preferences, and I'd say a great place to start is just by adjusting that bass and treble, those paddles, export it, listen to it, and if what you're hearing, you know, if maybe you're lacking some vocal clarity, and that's your preference, then you can maybe boost 2.5K or cut 2.5K if it's too much for you. A bit of warmth, maybe you want to introduce some 200 or 150 into the system, so bring that up in the target curve. But listen to it and try and understand what it is you're missing, because you know, one person's target curve or one rule for a target curve is not necessarily going to work for all systems.
Exactly.
So try it out.
Yeah, so actually I have my screen is back up here. So let's look at some of the things we talked about. So this is now just kind of a rough curve that I built. And if you look here, through here there is a dip in the speaker, right? So that is a natural dip. And if I look at every Bauer speaker in this room, that dip actually exists there. That is where the tweeter and the mid bass crossover. So I put it back, right? Then what I did was you look at the speaker and you see, oh, it starts to ramp up and there's a little bit of bass here. So I added a, you know, a rise of about 2, right? Now, of course, I can do the same thing with the subwoofers. I can look at the subwoofers, I can see where the bass is, and I can make those adjustments. You notice, so I can go in and make those particular curves. Experimentation is great. The nice thing is you can load 3 filters into the AVR. And you could try, we joke that we have accurate, and then we have what we call Hellcat mode, which is not accurate, but it's a heck of a lot of fun, right? So you can go in and build multiple target curves. The other thing that I normally do is I roll off the higher frequencies, starting at about 10K, just because the way that it was explained to me is, like you said, in a theater, a lot of times you are far away from the speakers, and that air and that between you and the main speakers kind of naturally roll off the high frequencies. Now, when you go in your room, a lot of times you're 5 feet from your speakers, not 45 feet from your speakers. You hope that the engineer who mastered the disc for release for consumer has taken that into account, that you're in a near field experience instead of a far field, but often they don't. So by rolling it off, I've found that we can play the systems a lot louder, a lot bigger, without it seeming harsh. But that's my opinion, and we could have a whole webinar just on whether or not people believe that or not, you know. But even most of the curves, you'll see a high frequency roll off. Cool thing is you can adjust it. Now there's 2 ways to do it, Josh, right? You have your basic shelving, which is the levers, right? And then you have the finite adjustments, right? Is that now which ones do you normally use, the shelving or the finite adjustments?
So I'll always start with the shelving, you know, a bit of a less is more approach. To achieve what you were looking at with the high frequency roll off, there's another way to go about that as well. And we've got the curtains. So the
Right here.
vertical bar that exists, yeah, we can drag that left a touch. And then you can let the top end of that speaker roll off naturally without processing it. So that's a good way to achieve a similar result. You know, quite often I'm very happy with the result from just this bass and treble adjustment. But quite often, you know, I'm quite fussy with my center channel personally, so I do tend to dial in a bit more of a custom response with the control points there.
Yeah.
And certainly with, you know.
Yeah. And like I said, don't look at this top because, well, what are you doing? We've been playing with this. This is a sample, right? So we're still playing with it, trying to determine what's the best output. This was just to quickly do the tutorial that we did earlier. So we're still working on what that roll off should be at the levels that we actually play. Now, another thing that people bring up is we have this thing called channel level adjust, and people asked about it in in the chat. What the channel level adjust is it allows you to turn up channels, the level of channels for a single source input. So say for example, I'm playing a movie and I want more bass, I can go into channel level adjust and turn up the subwoofers or turn down the center channel. That only applies to that one input, right? And I'm not making any adjustments to the overall mix of this room. I'm just saying when I play this particular input, make this adjustment. So for example, a turntable, I can say if I'm running my subwoofers, it sounds a little too warm, I could turn my subwoofers down, so when I go to turntable, it's not going to be as loud. People were asking, how does that interact and how does that impact active room treatment? And I was just like, well, maybe if you turn up the level that way, is the processing just going to look at it and say, okay, now this has to be louder. So how do those speakers interact as I make it louder? What would it do? How does it interact with that? Do you have any insight?
And that's, I don't think I have the answer to that myself. We can dive a bit deeper and get back on the comment section maybe later. But as a general rule, because of the way that processing is working, so when we measure the room, the whole principle is that sound distorts a room in a predictable way. So if the speakers stay the same, if they stay in the same place, if their processing is the same and the room stays the same, then the sound is going to behave the same way predictably every time. So we can make adjustments for that. If we change things in the room, so if we move the speakers, move the subwoofers, then that's going to have changed the environment that we measured, and it's no longer predictable. So as a general rule, we say don't touch anything after Dirac. If you want to make the adjustments, make them within Dirac itself. I have a feeling your adjustments might be on the channel level and not the output level. If that's the case, then that's a great place to adjust them. But I think we should circle back on that one and maybe
I will check on that. So basically, the safest way to do it would be if you have a different desired sound, like Frederick mentioned, more warmth, less warmth, just do 2 different curves and then save them as presets so you can use the option menu button on the remote control to switch between one of the 3 presets instead of messing.
I learned that from you guys at CEDIA
or the quick selects. Yes,
fun.
You can build a
That
quick
really
select, and it can actually go in and hit 1. It switches to the turntable and switches to this particular preset. So that's the other way to do it. All right. Any other questions, Frederick, as we go along?
Yeah, there's a couple more support. It's like any guidelines on the level to set your support speakers by default. Should you always increase the level to say -24 if they can support, or should you just keep them as -18 unless you find that they need more?
So again, it doesn't necessarily pertain to the gain of the speaker itself. So -18 is on the stronger side of support already, and pushing it to -20. If you've got the confidence in the speaker, then -24, sure, that would be great. But again, I would maybe look to change the support frequencies first. Phil, I've got a little comment about the support ranges in your room there. So maybe we can dive into that in a bit.
Oh,
after
yeah. That's why we have the expert here.
I've got a couple of tweaks to help you out.
So which channels do you want to look at, Mr. Walker?
So your front, left, and right. So the default F support low for anything that isn't a subwoofer is 50 hertz. Now you've got is it the 8.3s? The
8.3 is the giant in walls, yeah.
So both by looking at the measurement and by doing a cheeky Google of those speakers, I know that the -6 is 30 hertz.
30?
So, yeah, so maybe if we go with the -3, so if we bring that up a little bit, maybe 35 hertz, that might be a little bit safe.
35? 35?
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Now those speakers can help out a little bit more, a little bit lower.
Actually, we'll leave the center at 50. So you said, okay. All right. Now you
so
have to you would have to go do that for each of the channels that it was that speaker is assisting with the support, right? So when
exactly.
I go to
Yeah, that's a
center
good point.
channel, I would go here and I would say 30. If I go to the rears, I would go there and I would go 30. I mean, I would go 35, 35, 35 as I go
Yeah,
down the groups, right? Okay.
exactly.
So I would go in there and make those adjustments for each of the additional groups here. I would go in and do 35. All right.
So now I have a question. So don't we have an 8.3 for the center as well?
Yes.
So why would we leave that one at 50?
So that was, if we look at the measurements again, and Phil, you showed this earlier, due to what I would imagine is the positioning in the room. Potentially, it can be the case within walls as well that
See, it
maybe the
dropped off
volume of
before.
the void is slightly different, and that results in a different low frequency performance. But in this case, we can see that actually the center hasn't gone down as low. So I would be, I wouldn't want to push that more than that, because we can see in the measurements that for whatever reason, be it the installation or the room position, that it hasn't worked out as well in that position.
Yeah. Yes, because you could look here.
Got
So if I
you.
look at
Okay.
group number one,
Right.
you'll see that group number one, the 8.3s run pretty flat down to about 30. See that? But then when I go to the center channel, the exact same speaker drops off.
Okay.
And so there's a big dip there. So
Got you.
so that's why we always want to look at the measurement. There's the anechoic chamber measurement rating, but then there is the in-room response. So as you make these adjustments, it's based more on what the microphone hears from that speaker in your room versus the tag that's on the box. Okay.
Yeah.
So that
And
was
again,
one tweak. You said you would boost to 35. I'm sorry, Josh. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, just to say that 50 is the default for a number of reasons. It just came out to be a safer way of doing it. In a previous implementation, we tried to look at the measurements and work out the low, but like you said, the in-room response can be a little deceptive, and we didn't want to push speakers way lower than what they were capable of because of an in-room measurement that was a little deceptive there. So the default is 50, but if you know the F3 of your speaker, and you look at the measurements and you see that it can go lower, then we can pull that F support lower and let it help out a little bit more.
Yeah. And what I've done as kind of a safety is you do your first curve, then you throw a torture test at the system, and you work your way up the volume till you get to reference level, right? We have our AVRs, the volume, I have it locked and it won't go above 0 to prevent people from blowing stuff up, right? Because we let somebody use it for a birthday party and let me turn it up beyond that. And then so I'll do is I'll take something insanely crazy, like everybody, the race scene in Ready Player One, right? Absolute chaos, right? And then I'll do my target curve, and then I'll run that at 6 dB down, and I'm like, okay. And then I'll run, or 10 dB down. Then I'll run it at 8 dB down, and then I'll run it and I'll work my way up, right? To make sure that when I am running it at full bore reference level, nothing is distressed, right? Then if you wanted to, you can go in and, hey, let me crank up that 35 and then run that again at minus 6 dB and see, is that speaker happy? And then that way, that's just kind of a safety thing. Because I don't think Cam does not like going to people's houses and swapping out tweeters on 801s because people decide that they wanted to run it this way, or blowing up woofers. So that's kind of like my test. If you can get through Ready Player One, the race scene at full volume, at reference level, you know that your system, there's very few tracks that I can think of that's as challenging as that. If you can get through that, most likely it's not going to come across anything that's really going to push it even further than that. So that's kind of like my little, just in case, to save yourself. All right? So any other questions about target curves, Frederick?
Yeah, there's still a couple. I can see Martin Tulin is also answering some questions live in there. So does a room curve, I think maybe he's meaning target curve, overwrite the shelving tabs, or do the tabs contribute to the curve? And also, is there a limit to the bass boost in ART?
So it's the shelving or the control points, it's just two different ways to create a target curve. So it's whichever you can see is whichever's in play. They don't affect each other.
So yeah, so here's the
So
shelving one.
what if I then load a Harman curve, for example? Then that will influence, because that will kind of overwrite or not?
So if you load a target curve in, then that will be a control points target curve. So it will look similar to what Phil's showing here.
Okay.
And that will be what the target curve is. Those shelves don't do anything in the background. It's just two different ways to get to the same goal. And then there was a second part to that question about the amount of base boost with active room treatment.
Is there a limit to the base boost in ART?
How capable are your speakers?
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, I can't give any more than that. But if you've got an insane setup, then be my guest.
Yeah, that's the point that we really want to stress. If you look at the graphs, and there's a 18 dB of boost in your room, in room response, you could put 18 dB back, right, or whatever you want, or whatever. If you never want that, holy cow. But if your room is only 3 dB up, do not add 18 dB just because the system will allow you, because your speaker is not going to be happy. So as Josh says, you have to look at the capabilities of your speaker in your room. And based on the capabilities of the speakers in your room, that tells you kind of where you could, that's the way I would do it.
So one of the other things I would mention there then with active room treatment, so we've talked about we're co-optimizing the speakers. So all of the speakers are helping out. So when we ask a speaker to not only play its own signal, but also play some other signals, and some of those signals could be destructive, which means they're focusing on reducing frequency, so almost cancellation. That means that those woofers can be working quite hard. So with active room treatment, if you've got a lot of channels supporting a lot of things, then whilst you may not hear perceived volume, you might be eating headroom just by allowing that speaker to support more. So that is one of the things that I would say to be a little wary of when you're in Phil Jones Hellcat mode, is to just bear in mind that you are asking more of the speakers than you're necessarily hearing, because they're all working to other targets.
Or you could do Hellcat mode and bass control, and if you wanted to, then you could just say, you do you, right? The subwoofers, focus on the subwoofers.
Yeah.
So if you look here in this room, by the way, you could see this is the in-room response for some of these subs. And if you look, there's a boost there. There's a decent amount there, right? So I could have theoretically added a lot more bass here because I have this. But I just looked at it and said, safely looking at this, I want to make sure that I'm not overdriving. So I have additional headroom that I could have played with here. But as Josh mentioned, the subs are doing more. They're helping the other guys out too. So, give them a break. And this bass right here is crazy good. And we're only up 3 dB in this room, and it's crazy good. So
yeah, remember the mains are also capable of helping. We just drag those mains down to 35 hertz. So maybe that deficiency in the subs could be filled in with the mains. So we can make these things work out and balance the system in a nice way.
Yeah, lots of
it goes both ways.
Yeah, exactly. The cool thing is, the main thing is experimentation, flexibility, control, right? The system will give you if you didn't want to go through all of this stuff, it will make a very good, basic calculation for you, and it's going to sound great. But for those who are enthusiasts like us, or people who would be on this call asking about grouping and Fs and everything else, you have the capability to experiment and play, try different target curves, load them into the AVRs, experiment with them, and eventually you'll it won't take that long, but maybe an afternoon on a Saturday when the wife and kids aren't there, you can just hammer on the thing and you determine what is your favorite setup.
Yeah, or the neighbors are on a trip.
If
Yeah, for you, Frederick, the neighbors are on a trip because they'll be
Yeah.
banging on the ceiling if you start doing this type of stuff in your house.
I got neighbors upstairs, downstairs, and next door, so that's not going to happen.
Same. I used to have a deaf neighbor, which was fantastic, but not anymore. Yeah, well, if you have the time and you really want to get into this, like Phil said, obviously the default is a good starting point for you to. I would always export the default first, just to hear what's happening, to understand the room, to understand how active room treatment's working in the room. But if you really want to get into it, a really interesting way to kind of start to understand how active room treatment is working a little bit more is remove all of the support from all of the channels, or as much support, and then start introducing bits of support back. The spread is a really good way to see what the minimum and maximum on seat variation is. So when you start reintroducing support and you recalculate that, you can see how that seat to seat consistency improves dramatically as you add more in. And that's a really good way to kind of illustrate how effective it can be. And also maybe you add a support group in, and the seat to seat consistency hasn't improved, then it might be that actually that group wasn't able to meet the target in a way that was beneficial, and then maybe we can leave it out. Obviously, there's a limit to cross terms with support groups, so it might be that you've run out of groups that can support if you've got like a 9.6.6 or whatever 9.4.6 system.
Yeah. So
You can
if
be
you
a
want to
little.
see the spread thing, so this is the spread. And remember, active room treatment is working 150 down, right? And you can see there's this huge spread between the bass response and how the bass interacts with the microphone positions and the speakers. When I hit correct it, you'll see that that gets a whole lot better, you know? And that was one of the things that you pointed out before that we did the demo at CEDIA, was we had people move from seat to seat to seat, and the consistency in the bass was very, very close. There wasn't that, this Cam's seat sounds great, my seat sounds okay, the person back over here and the row back here didn't sound really good. We had, what, 25 seats in that room? And as you moved around those seats, because the corrected spread was so good, that that it was every seat in the house immediately got better. If you notice, it's only where it's doing, this is different. Up here stays about the same. You know why? Because the corrections of this spread, like Josh says, it cleans up other things along the way. By focusing on the 150, it also helps the other higher frequencies as well. Is that the best way to kind of explain this, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to represent it, and a good way when you're messing with the parameters to see what's going on. Because as you add more support, as you calculate that, you can see that spread change, and make decisions. And that's how, when I said in your system, Phil, using the center to support the left and right actually improved the
This right here,
spread.
that through
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Okay,
So it
all
was
right.
beneficial to use the center in this case,
Okay.
with your capable speakers.
Okay, that
That's how
makes
I got
that
to that
makes sense.
conclusion.
That's awesome. So, okay, so let me see here. So is there any more questions on there, Frederick?
Oh yeah, plenty. We can go on and on.
So what we're gonna do, because they will run us, we'll be here till tomorrow morning. We're gonna spend another 5 minutes on questions. I'm sure I may have to have Martin, Martine, who's hiding in the background right now, and Mr. Walker show up next time, because I'm sure it's probably going to be round two. You know, that we may want to do this again, because it seems like it is incredibly popular. And thank you for staying after hours, Mr. Walker, and Frederick for staying up so late to actually do this with me. All right. So Frederick, couple more questions.
Yeah, just very quick. So generally speaking, if you're not sure, Chris is asking, what's the highest dB boost that you would recommend in the bass region if you don't know your subwoofer capabilities? A safe way.
So actually, this goes back to maybe the point Phil was making. If you look at the measurement and you see where the bass is sitting, typically if your target curve is matching that, then that's going to be pretty safe, because that's what we already know is the system's capable of when we measured it. Typically, you can get away with more than that, and we're not going to, or we don't necessarily allow you to boost crazy levels. So I've done many a system, to Phil's Hellcat mode, where there's an 8 or a 9 dB boost, and that is quite excessive and very kind of punchy, but still safe. The caveat there is obviously if you crank a system to its limits and you have a 9 dB boost, then you're going to run out of headroom. You're going to run into distortion sooner than you would if you had a 5 dB boost. So within reason, if you're at sensible listening levels for your system, then kind of any amount of boost should be okay. But, as with any speaker and audio technology, if you crank it all the way, then I can't make any guarantees, and that's with or without Dirac, if you crank a speaker and blow it up, you can do that without Dirac comfortably.
Yeah, that's a bit of common sense, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Stingberry is asking, how does ART control the dynamics based on the content? Does it do like automatic gain control? Does it do ACG based on the magnitude of each supported speaker? How does it know how to make this work dynamics-wise?
It faithfully reproduces the input. So we're not trying to manipulate what was intended to play in any way. We're just looking at the speaker's performance in the room in order to kind of faithfully reproduce that channel with all of its dynamics. So loud should be loud, quiet should be quiet, as the artist intended.
Yeah, true sound. We've used this concept in many concepts. Question from Frank Wright. When you change the bass and the treble pedals under the bass control, are these alterations also ported to ART? It sets the bass before you do it.
So the target curve, when you go between the different technologies, should remain the same. Yeah.
Somebody did actually bring up that sometimes when you switch between the two, even though using the same target curve, they may sound a little different. You may have you may feel like, oh, I wish it seems like the bass control has more bass. Then you would go in and start adjusting things such as the F support and how deep each speaker supports to do that too, because sometimes how they interact or how it applies that target curve may require a slightly different target curve or adjustment for bass control compared to active room treatment.
So I mean, I would hope, given that you've spent money on an upgrade, they do sound different. But to your point about maybe bass control sounds like it has more bass, there's a couple of things to consider there. So bass control isn't dealing with resonance and that kind of time decay in the bass region. And that can be perceived as volume sometimes. When there's a lot of buildup in a room, you can perceive that as being more bass. But it's not necessarily beneficial, or it's not bass that you want. So with active room treatment, it's a much cleaner bass. And that's my comment earlier about with active room treatment, I tend to do a much higher bass target curve. Because it's a cleaner bass and you can get away with more, which is more fun. The other thing with active room treatment to bear in mind that doesn't happen with bass control is active room treatment has a cutoff filter at 20 hertz. So with bass control, your subs under 20 hertz are just going to play out whatever they do. With active room treatment, we're actually cutting it off. And maybe if we go back to your window there, Phil, we can look at how to deal with that. Because we have a sort of a processing bypass or processing throughput that you can do under 20 hertz for infrabass.
Okay, where's that?
So the support sliders that are at the bottom on the left. So if we look at our subwoofer, and we're going to want to probably be on the bass group to do this adjustment. And if we drag that down, if it's all the way down to 20 hertz, then if you shuffle left slightly, you'll see a little tick box.
Oh, right there.
And that is an infrabass bypass. So you can allow infrabass to pass through. It is unfiltered, but it allows infrabass to pass through which can bring back a little sense of bass under 20 hertz. So
That's
yeah,
bass extension. Yeah.
exactly. So you bring that back, the bass extension, and then of course with a cleaner active room treatment bass, you can afford to boost more bass to get that kickback.
Okay.
That's
So that makes a good.
exactly. Yeah, I was going to say we have an issue in one of our showrooms where this is perceived as we have a lack of bass extension, that very deep bass. So this would actually help to sort it out. It doesn't. There's another thing that we also played. Remember, Phil? We had loudness management. It works for some, and in some cases we say we should turn it off, but in some rooms we have to turn it back on because
Yeah.
it works better with ART, right?
Yeah, that was an AVR functionality that's in the menu system under volume. So, yeah, and it's all experimentation. I like the point that you brought up, Josh, about it may have seemed like there's more bass because boom is conceived as more sometimes. So because of that, because you're losing that kind of boom resonance, it may not seem like there's as much bass, but it's almost like, but this will get you closer to the creator's intent. If you want a little bit more, then you could either go to subsonic or you can go back in and build a more aggressive target curve in the bottom to get the bass up there. So
And
it's
the
just the
concept
cleaner
of
bass means less boom, but sometimes less boom is perceived as less bass.
exactly. The
course,
you know the
spinning wheels up
concept,
again.
we're not unfamiliar with that concept in audio, right? If you've got a cheaper speaker that distorts, it can be perceived as louder because we recognize distortion as kind of extra volume. And then when you've got like a really nice distortion-free speaker, you keep turning the volume up and you keep turning the volume up, and then suddenly you can't hear the person sat next to you because you haven't realized how loud it is because it's so clean and there's not distortion. So we're not unfamiliar with the concept that distortion in the bass region, we mean resonance and all of that kind of bloating, but it can be perceived as level when
You could probably see that even in our theater. Like, I can go into like a room that has a sound bar and I'll run the dB meter, and it'll seem like it's super loud. Then I'll go in the theater and we'll run it way higher than that. 6 dB higher, just a dramatic amount higher, and it doesn't seem as harsh or as loud because it's just so clean, which makes it great because you get these gigantic jumps in dynamics is what makes the jump scares so much better in the room. You have all that power waiting there, and when it happens, it's still clean, but it doesn't seem as loud or as harsh as if it's so cleaner doesn't seem as loud. That's the best way we could say it if we were going to summarize.
There's one more thing that I wanted to double check with Joss, if you don't mind. Our AVRs support 4 subwoofers. We have directional bass and we have standard bass. Now, I understand that ART does not support directional bass. It has to be standard, right?
Yeah, so it effectively doesn't need directional bass because by using these support channels, we can build truly full range directional channels. So obviously with directional bass, you're using the channels to influence which subwoofer is bass managed to what channel. But with ART, we have this co-optimization where everything is full range, or can be full range. So you do perceive direction with the low frequency coming from different places. So directional bass isn't needed.
Okay.
Right, but then there's a problem with the phasing that a lot of people make a mistake. If you have 4 subwoofers, the phase, say for example, for the front subwoofers are 0 degrees because then they will play in sync with the front speakers. The ones in the rear should be reversed. They should be 180 degrees so that the bass is going in the same direction, unlike with directional bass, right? So that's why I'm mentioning this. Otherwise, you will be canceling out the bass.
So you're talking about like a dual bass array, which
no,
is...
if you have, yeah, in a certain way. So you have left and right front. They fire forward. Then the rear and the left, because they're positioned the other way around, you have to reverse the phase to make the bass go in the same direction. Otherwise, they will be canceling each other out.
So short answer again, doesn't matter.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
could, you could flip a coin and set the phase on your subwoofers. It doesn't bother me personally. I mean, maybe an OCD thing, have them all set the same. But when we measure the room, we can understand the phase of all of the subwoofers and all of the speakers. So actually, if you've miswired the system as a whole, any of the speakers, one of the things that Dirac will do with the mixed phase impulse response correction that it does is it will fix that phase. So
It will
actually,
correct the phase. Awesome.
yeah, unlike without using Dirac, you would need to take care of the phase, as you rightly said. With Dirac, it will fix it all for you.
So I can tell you, I can give you a perfect scenario about that. We have multiple systems in our reference theater, and one of them is using 4 CTSW15 Bauer subs being driven by little SA1000, not little, big SA1000 amplifiers, right? And when we ran 2 of them, 2 subs great, 3 subs great, 4 subs not so great. So what we had to do was, back in the days, we kept going back and forth using another competitor's room compensation measurement, because that was before, that was pre-Dirac, all right, pre-Dirac. And while we were doing, eventually we found out that the left rear needed to be switched. I think it was like 45 degrees, because it had like a variable phase, 45 to 60 degrees out of phase to play well with others. So that took hours, right? I ran the first version of bass control, and it did it automatically. Did not do anything because it didn't care. It just said, all right. And it's because it's all phase is timing, right? So it just fixed it, So what took hours that you could do manually with something like another room compensation software, or everybody's using those, the outboard processors for your subwoofers and stuff like that. The Dirac just looked at it. The Dirac looked at it and just did it automatically. So that's an example of, it doesn't care where you set your phase. It's just going to fix it, right? So I thought that was
it measures the state. It measures what is.
Yeah.
And it's predictable. So as long as you're not changing the phase after the measurement, then it'll correct for that.
Okay, excellent. All right, I think we are at our limit. We're at 9, so we went to, a good 90 minutes. I'm sure that there's even more questions on this on the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to look at those, and along the way, we'll scan them, and if there's additional questions that Martine or Mr. Walker could answer, along with Frederick and the rest of the team, we'll make sure that we go in and continue to answer those questions. Cam, thank you for coming, and he's monitoring the questions. I'm looking at questions over here. Frederick, thank you for monitoring the questions, and Martine in the background, thank you for answering stuff on there as well. And producer Nick, who's hiding in the back, hitting switches. We can't get this done without them. So thank everybody for coming. We're going to do, and hopefully, Mr. Walker, I will see you soon next time you are in the U.S.
Definitely.
All right. So, and by the way, I got to do the little thing. Please make sure you like and subscribe to this channel, and make sure that you go to Josh. You got a little shameless plug, and we got one more thing we got to cover too,
Black
right?
Friday.
Oh yeah. So the next thing is there's Black Friday deals coming. So there will be the exact pricing. I am not sure off the top of my head, but we will make sure that we post that information on the site, because you will be able to upgrade or get a parts of the Dirac suite or active room treatment at some great pricing going into Black Friday, right? And we'll make sure that we include that as a slide along the way, because I don't think I have the data. Maybe producer Nick has the times and dates, but it starts on Black Friday and goes through the holiday season. And of course, Josh and Mr. Walker and the rest of the Dirac team have their website is actually very good as well, that goes through setup and other tools. So of course we tried to put as much material on our website for for this technology, but the best way, another great way to get the information is go directly to the source. So make sure you also follow and like and subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. So anything else you'd like to add, Frederick, before we let everybody go?
No, it's people are keeping asking questions, and yeah, it keeps on. So we will basically go through these and make sure that everyone gets their questions answered, and then if we can do a next look, it's the same thing with every same webinar we're doing. If there's certain topics that we need to dive further into, then we can do that. If they need more information about ART into fine-tuning, I mean, yes, they know how the software works, but what do you do after the software? Tips and tricks and that sort of thing. We can go even more detail.
Exactly.
Right?
You could spend an hour and a half on just building a target curve, you know? So
it's amazing to see just looking at your curves and saying, hey, go there and do this and that. Not even hearing it, but just looking at the measurements. So if we have that kind of capability, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So take care, everyone. And we will talk to you soon.